Sarah, does that mean we're on?
Yes, we're live.
We're live. Okay, good evening, everyone. This is the Irvington Planning Board. Tonight, I'm Caesar Manfredi, the chairman. There's Mike Smith, Dan McGillicuddy, Laurie Davidowitz, Kevin Thurman on the board. There's Sarah Palermo playing the gatekeeper. There's Ed Marin, the building inspector, Doug Hahn, the village consultant engineer, and Mary Ann Stessich, our village attorney. Sarah, we all set with taxes?
Yes,
And we have the minutes from the last meeting, what was the date of the last meeting? December what?
December 1st.
Okay, everybody okay with the December 1st minutes?
Yes. Yes.
We have a motion to approve the minutes of December 1st.
Motion to approve minutes from December 1st.
We have a second.
Second.
I vote yes. Mike,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Kevin.
Yes.
All right, the minutes are approved. And I'll do the order of presentation for this evening. Number 1 will be 31 Maple Street. Number 2 is 65 Havermeyer Road. Number 3 is Maravera Castle Road. Number 4 is 61 Butterwood Lane West. Number 5 is 49 Field Terrace. Number 6 is 10 Hancock Place. Number 7 is 11 Hancock Place. Okay, let's move on to the first presentation, and that would be 2021-43, 31 Maple Street.
Caesar, I'm gonna recuse on this one.
Okay, that's right. Is Mike Baffuco around? Okay, well, we'll go with 4. We have a quorum.
If you're here to represent the application, can you please hit the raise hand button? Nobody's raising their hand.
Gregory Sharp is the architect on this.
I don't see him.
No,
On to the next one, Susan.
All right. Number 2 is 2021-42, 65 Havermeyer Road.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Bill Witt, the architect for 65 Havermeyer Road. Let me start by wishing you all a happy new year. At the last meeting, there were a few comments, mostly to do with some notes on the site plan in reference to identifying if there's any disturbance. There was an issue with the existing deer fence that the board wanted addressed. And a few other things that I believe were all addressed in the memo that I sent over in response to the plan review report. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have in reference to my latest submission.
Caesar.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Witt, or should we move
Well,
to?
one of the comments was for him to do a rendering of some sort of what it looked like from the street. And I think he's attempting to do just that. And
I did. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
I know you did because I saw the presentation, but we'd like to see it here.
Sure. Would you like me to share my screen?
Would like
Yeah.
that very much. I was offline for a second. I was calling one of the alternate members for 31 Maple, and he's going to join us.
So I actually submitted two new documents for review. The first one I labeled PB2, and here you can see the existing front elevation and the proposed front elevation. On the proposed, there's a dotted line showing the existing roof line. Again, I apologize, it's hard to read. There's some line weight issues converting an AutoCAD file to a PDF, but you can just make out the line of the existing structure. On top of this, I submitted another drawing called PB3, which was
Right.
taken from a photo on the left-hand side of the driveway at the street, just slightly ahead of it. So here you see the existing house, and then the proposed showing how the partial second floor would impact the existing. You can see that some of the windows are being changed in this elevation, but we feel like it's a nice balance.
The windows on the first floor are being changed. Yeah,
Correct.
it looks better that way. Yeah. Okay. Does anybody on the board have a question here? Mike,
I do not.
Dan,
No questions, Cecil. Thank you.
Laurie,
No, thank you.
and Kevin?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you for providing that little bit of artwork. And we have anything from the public? Sarah?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak, and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay, Mary Ann, do we have a resolution for this project?
Whereas in December 2021, Nishan and Lisa Wade applied for site development plan approval to construct a 2nd-story addition to their house at 65 Havermeyer Road. And whereas the proposed addition encroaches into the rear yard setback and therefore requires a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals. And whereas the plans as originally submitted showed a deer fence that encroached onto neighboring properties, which fence was removed from the revised plans. And whereas Han Engineering reviewed the plans and in a memorandum dated November 29th, listed a number of items, all of which were addressed in a subsequent submission. And whereas Suzanne Nolan, the village's landscape consultant, reviewed the plans and had no recommendations. And whereas the planning board held a public hearing on the application on December 1st, 2021 and January 5th, 2022. And whereas it's a type 2 action under SECR and therefore requires no environmental review. Now therefore be it resolved that the planning board grants the application for site development plan approval of the improvements reflected in the drawings entitled Additions and Alterations Wade Residence prepared by William Witt Architects. The drawings are specified, subject to receiving a variance from the ZBA for the rear yard incursion.
Okay, any questions on that, board?
No.
No, okay. I vote yes and authorize Sarah to sign for me. Mike,
I vote yes and authorize Sarah to sign for me.
Dan,
I vote in favor and authorize Sarah to sign for me.
Laurie,
I vote yes and authorize Sarah to sign.
Kevin.
He's not voting.
Oh, that's right. He's not voting.
Oh,
No, he's
but-
voting on
No,
this.
but this isn't 31 Maple.
Okay.
So I vote yes and authorize Sarah to sign on my behalf.
Okay, terrific. Well, thank you very much for the presentation and nice job and have a good day. Hope you had a nice, happy new year and survived. Good thing we're having Zoom meetings because we don't have to worry about ice.
Absolutely.
Have
Well,
a
thank
good
you very
evening.
much. You guys have a good evening.
The 31 Maple is on.
Okay, and Mike is on too, so. All right, Mike Bafuco will be sitting in for Kevin Thurman, who is recusing himself for 31 Maple. We have a presentation, please. Sarah, is he having trouble coming on or?
He's on here. It says Greg. I just got an email from him saying he's on. There he is.
He's muted, it looks like. Oh,
unmute. Okay, do you hear me now? Hello,
Yes.
hello? Okay. Hi, how are you? Oh, I gotta get my start video, I guess. Sorry. Here I am. All right, hi, everybody. Yes, 31 Maple. We only had a couple of issues and they were mostly based on just needing some paperwork revisions. And so we've done all that. We just, based on the report that we got from Han yesterday, I think we've made all the final changes. And the only significant change was really based on our meeting with the arborist, which had to do with these trees and these tree roots, had suggested that we just turn the drainage system this way in order to not interfere with the root systems of these two trees. So that, and the client doesn't plan on taking any trees down. So this is just, something that the arborist had recommended, and they're going to assist us or write a report to present that fact. But as far as the project goes, I don't think there was anything.
Hey, Greg, sorry to interrupt, but you want to be about 10 feet from the property line there. It looks like you're right on it, on the property there for that unit.
For this unit? Okay.
Yeah,
So drainage needs to be 10 feet from the property.
yeah. Sometimes you can, if it was on the other side near the street, it'd probably be better, but
Yeah.
we'll take a look
So
at
they
that.
had done a wall here. So there's now like a solid wall, it looks like, with an elevation change. So this is which is, I'm sure, was done at some previous, the neighbor did it. But the fact is, so this is about a 3-foot wall with a fence on top. So we didn't think there was really any, reason why this couldn't be here, because it seems like there's no other use. There's no like connection, between the two. And it's like, it seems to be about a 30-inch grade difference at that point. So.
I'm sure we could squeeze it in there. I'll look at it with you offline.
Okay, great. And that was it. And then just the arborist had also said, which has nothing to do with this project, just that the tree in front is not doing well. So that is, I don't know, I guess that may just have to get filed separately as something with the tree committee. We've clearly outlined the limits of construction. All the work that's happening is really in the back and inside the house. So there's no change at all to any of the front. And it's just, we may have added some details on some lighting. And then this is the same as we had presented at last meeting. So
Go back to the floor plan. Just that, I see you put the window in. It says there's only one window to the north.
That's right. Yeah. Well, so we're trying to blend in with the house's existing architecture, but trying to open up the rear of the house to the yard.
Okay.
And so it seems to, it's a small thing. We're not expanding the basement. We're not, going into the attic. We're just adding a little bit more space. The primary use is to add bathrooms. It's currently a 1-bathroom house. So the nexus of this whole process was to just get a couple more bathrooms for a family of 4. So that's what we're doing.
Okay. Anybody on a board have canvassed the board? Mike, you have any comment?
No further questions.
Dan,
No questions, Caesar. Thank you.
Lori,
No questions, thanks.
Kevin?
No
Kevin,
question.
and the other Mike Bafuco?
No questions.
Anybody from the public have any comment? Sarah?
There's nobody raising their hand to speak, and there are no comments in the chat.
Mary Ann, do we have a resolution for this?
Yeah. Whereas in September 2021, Sylvia and Justin Lukács applied for a site development plan approval to construct an addition at the rear of their house and to install a patio and stormwater mitigation system at 31 Maple Street, which is located in the View Preservation District. And whereas the proposed construction will require variances from the Zoning Board of Appeals for coverage and floor area ratio. And whereas Han Engineering reviewed the plans and in a memorandum dated November 29th, 2021, listed a number of items, most of which were addressed in a subsequent submission. And whereas Suzanne Nolan, the village's landscape consultant, reviewed the plans and made a number of recommendations which were complied with in a subsequent submission. And whereas the planning board held a public hearing on the application on December 1st and January 5th, and whereas the proposed construction would not negatively impact the view of the Hudson River from neighboring properties, and whereas it's type 2 action under SECRA and therefore requires no environmental review, now therefore be it resolved that the planning board grants the application for site development plan approval of the improvements reflected in the drawings entitled the Lukács Residence, prepared by Gregory Sharp, architect, and the drawings are specified, subject to 1, receiving variances from the ZBA for coverage and FAR, 2, complying with the items in the Hahn memorandum dated January 4th, 2022, and 3, coming back to the planning board for review of any tree removal required in connection with this project.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on the resolution from anybody on the board? Okay, we'll poll for a vote. Mike Smith,
I vote yes and authorize Sarah to sign for me.
Mike Bafulco,
I vote yes and authorize Sarah to sign for me.
Dan,
I vote yes and authorize Sarah to sign for me.
Lori,
I vote yes and authorize Sarah to sign on my behalf.
and I'm Caesar, and I vote yes and authorize Sarah to sign for me. Well, thank you very much for your presentation and have a good evening.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. Bye.
Mike Bafulco, you may want to stay on even though there's no further alternate use. This is Castle coming up and it may be interesting to stay on. The next will be, as I said, 2021-27 Castle Road or Marvera. While we're waiting, I neglected to say Susan Nolan is also sitting in on the Marvera application as part of the village effort in that she is the landscape architect.
Mr. Chairman, I think our entire team is here.
Good evening, David.
Good evening.
You going to make a presentation?
Sure. I'm going to be very brief. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Board. David Steinmetz from the law firm of Zarin and Steinmetz here this evening, once again representing Marvera. I'm joined tonight by my client, Mark Aduzzi, our project engineer, Jim Manicarico, our landscape architect, Lucille Munns, and my colleague, Casey Brenner. I think I've got everybody from our team. Just in sum, since our last meeting, we have been working with your various consultants to supply amended materials consisting of a preliminary subdivision plat, a limited site development plan, a conceptual landscape plan, a revised conservation buffer easement agreement, as well as the other associated easements with our neighboring property owners. We are here, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, this evening because we believe we have addressed the issues of concern that have been raised by your board, by your consultants, and by the public. We believe we're in a position this evening to receive a negative declaration under the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act and for your board to then be in a position to entertain resolutions for preliminary subdivision approval and limited site development plan approval, should you decide to proceed in that direction. As I think you all know, we are unable to request final subdivision plat approval at this time because under the village code, that does have to be a separate matter with a separate public hearing. And I have discussed that with the village attorney because we were hoping to obviate the need for an additional public hearing. But I believe that it was concluded that we must proceed in that fashion. So we can go through, Mr. Chairman, anything you wish. I don't know whether that's necessary, but I've got our entire team here. We can address the questions and comments.
Wanted to make a presentation on, remember we had agreed to move the accessory box 10 more feet. So why don't we show that site plan and why don't we show the landscape plan, which.
That's fine. We'll focus on those two things.
The landscape plan is out there for a lot of reasons, and it would be, and there were some changes and a lot of discussion on that plan. So why don't you throw it up there, please?
It's on. In which order would you prefer, Mr. Chairman?
The way I said it, the site plan with the boxes.
Okay, so Casey or Jim, if you would put the limited site development plan up, and we can.
Can everyone see the buildable areas plan?
Yep, you've got it.
Well, David, if you'd like, I'll explain what we did here.
Perfect. Go right ahead, Jim. Thank you.
If you remember at the last meeting, the secondary building area line to the east was all the way up to the conservation buffer. So what we did was we moved that to be in line with the primary building area. And additionally, we moved the secondary building area lines at the back of lots 1 and 2, another 10 feet to the north. So there is now 60 feet from the rear property lines to each of those buildings.
Right, it's not clear because of scale that you did that. Could you just, I know in one of our meetings, our consultant was able to put a red marker on it and demonstrate that it isn't.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, on the actual subdivision plat, which was provided to the village from our surveyor, the distances are identified on the subdivision plat to the best of my knowledge.
I know it satisfies the board, but the public needs to see it.
Right. So we can put that up on the screen. Jim?
Should I share that now?
Yeah, Casey was going to share that too.
Hi, Casey.
Hello.
Casey also has COVID.
Thank you for putting it in the record, Marianne.
Join
No.
the
I'm towards the end of my quarantine, so I'm luckily feeling a lot better. But yes, I do.
It's a good thing we can Zoom these meetings without quarantine.
Yeah, man, imagine if we were meeting in person. Wow.
Yeah. Okay.
You might have to zoom in a bit.
You can make it a little bit larger.
Yeah.
So this is the preliminary subdivision plat. Jim can confirm that these are the 3 identical lots, both with the same primary and secondary building areas. This time, the surveyor did identify the widths of these various areas. The rear buffer at 40 feet, the side buffer at 25 feet, and the setbacks of the primary and secondary building area. Jim, if you can read those numbers better than I.
Right.
Primary and secondary.
So if you look to the left on lot 1, that shows the 40 feet from the property line to the primary and secondary building lot line building lines, and
on the side
to the back of lots 1 and 2, you can see that it's 60 feet from the rear property line to the secondary building area line.
Terrific.
Can you just focus on that section of the plat, just so that the rest of the public can see that it's where it's written?
Yep.
where the
certainly.
60
Is
feet is.
this
One more click,
one
Casey.
more?
Yeah.
Yeah, I see it.
Now it's clear. That's
So
perfect
we've
right
got-
there.
Right. We show the 40-foot buffer in the back, 60 foot to the secondary building areas for lots 1 and 2. And as you can see, 40 feet to the secondary building area on lot 1.
So let the record reflect, Mr. Chairman, that we have made the changes that were requested of the applicant.
Terrific. Thank you. You go back to the other site plan, the limited site plan.
Can you see the change in my screen, or do I need to
Yeah,
you're
unshare?
good.
and-
It's there.
Okay.
Good.
All right, does anybody on the board have a question with this site plan?
No.
Okay, could you have one of you, the landscape?
We're going to go to the landscape plan next. Yes.
Casey, would it be easier for me
Yeah,
to?
if you have it handy, I'll let you share it, Lucille.
Okay.
And you can cursor, Lucille. It will be easier for you.
Mhm.
So while she's bringing that up, Lucille has been working directly with Ms. Nolan to refine and revise the conceptual landscape plan. I'll let her walk through it. It's on the screen now, Lucille.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm just going to go over a couple of key things with regard. I have been working back and forth with Suzanne over the last week and a half, I would say, to finalize moving forward here.
Lucille, will you
Yep.
just clarify that this plan is different from the one that's posted on
Yes.
that was
Okay.
submitted previously? This is
So-
a new one.
This is a new plan. This was what had happened with the previous plan in the AutoCAD layers. Some of the plants were left off the plan graphic form, but they were counted in the plant summary. So there was a disconnect between the plant summary and the graphic representation. Also,
excuse me 1 second, just for clarification, the substance didn't change, the chart didn't change, the
No,
number of trees didn't change, it was the translation into the graphics.
yes,
And
yes,
the
correct.
the icons that represented certain trees were not represented properly.
Correct. So what the supersedes the graphics, if you will, has always been the plant material summary. So that's been updated since then. Plus additional notes have been placed on. Suzanne and I talked just for clarification purposes. So here, this whole tree identification, identifying, the trees where that information was taken from, and it talks about the tree, the arborist report, and how this was utilized and what's represented on the plan. So this helps folks understand the numbers that are on the existing tree locations. And then we try to simplify as well some of the graphics, just for clarification purposes, readability. It's still, and I'll walk you through how all that works. So the existing trees that are in these larger dotted areas are existing native species that are in good condition to remain. And why that is important is because in order to restore the woodlands, the invasive Norway maples and the dead and or dying trees would come out. So the idea or the goal and objective to see what is healthy and remaining to protect and preserve was the first step. And then protecting and preserving, where do we need to fill in? And the whole goal of this, Chairman and board, was to come up with some sort of quantity, because we were sort of going around and around and not coming up with, it was very conceptual to the point it didn't have any clarification for anyone. So by doing this, it allowed us to come up with a list of categories, canopy trees, if you will, which would be oaks, maples, tulips. I'll zoom in a little bit on the summary here. And then we had evergreen trees, 2 sizes, understory trees, 2 sizes, shrubs, 2 sizes, and then seed mix for each of the lots, plus plugs, and plugs are literally what they are. They're like 2-inch small plants that are placed anywhere between 18 inches and 2 feet apart, depending on the species. And then
Well,
summarize.
excuse me, the plugs, that could be any species, or is there a specific species we're looking at for plugs?
So the plugs would work with the seed mix, which is a native grasses and forbs that Suzanne and I talked about. So it could be
Is it
ferns.
indicated someplace on this?
Yeah, so there's actually, I'm gonna up to the top is a little bit easier here. So so the layer, it's called the ground layer, and this is what it's going to be. It's going to be ferns and types not to include or including perennials, including, you know, and in grasses and sedges. So there's this, you know, they're all native mixes. So that was the establishment of the ground layer, and that is to supplement the seed mix that's put down for any disturbed areas. So it's sort of a belts and suspenders approach to the ground layer.
Okay, thank you. Move on.
And then okay, so going back to the overall plan, again, trying to identify quantities of canopies, evergreens, understory, shrub layer mix, and then taking all of this then and summarizing it into the plant summary. So lot 1 has its lists, and then lot 2 has its lists of what's expected for this lot in here. And lot 3, originally we did not propose any work in lot 3 because the slopes are rather steep, but Suzanne and I talked about it, and again, removing the Norway maples and then putting in some additional understory trees and some shrubs would help with any potential runoff. So again, just establishing canopied treed woodland. That's the goal and objective. At the same time, creating enough ground layers so that it becomes to help with water and water uptake and protection and preservation of the pond. So again, these all represent, you know, the larger ones represent larger canopy trees, smaller ones the smaller sizes. And again, the goal and objective here was to come up with essentially a shopping list of what's expected in each of these buffer areas.
And Lucille, would you just mention the 2 notes that you were asked to and that you did insert into the conceptual plan at the bottom in bold?
Sure. This here says the conceptual landscape plan for the conservation buffer is illustrative. Plant quantities and plant locations are suggested. The planting material schedule supersedes the plan and is based on existing conditions and may be subject to change per the final site plan approval. And then also see the conservation buffer easement agreement for required conservation buffer maintenance and specific maintenance requirements. So that's to tie it all back into the easement agreement.
Okay, you know, I'm sure it's accurate, but it's a little difficult of a hodgepodge of all the different icons intersecting. Is there another way of looking at them with a little more clarity?
Maybe if I can walk you through it, that may help.
Maybe you can glue it up a little bit.
Sure. And so part of it too is what you're also seeing is some of the trees that are underneath. You'll see like a number here, 213, 215. So underneath these little snippets here, those are existing trees. Those are most likely the Norway maples that would come out. So this here, and I'm just gonna use so this tree here, this, what I'm highlighting in green, these trees are the canopy trees that are larger size.
When you say large, how large is large?
They're 2 to 2.5 inch caliper.
Okay, so about 8 feet.
No, that'll be definitely 10 to 12 feet easily.
Okay.
Yeah, easily 10 to 12 feet. And then the smaller ones So I'll just move this away so you can see these are the canopy trees. So there's 1, 2, 3 canopy trees here. And then this represents an evergreen tree, evergreen tree, evergreen tree. So there's 1, 2, 3 evergreen trees. And I try to make, this is the property line. So these come here and this goes here. But again, trying to make it seem like it's one wooded lot contiguous and not bifurcated or separate. So that's why I looked at it in sort of a global context. And then underneath here, these areas here, that's sort of hatched in. Originally I had like a lot of round circles. This is shrub massing in here. This would all be underneath here. That would all be shrub massing in here. Suggested locations. This is a understory tree. These are, for example, could be dogwoods or shadblows. These are understory trees here. That's that symbol. Then I did not put any of the hatches on for the seeds or the forbs because it just would be too busy. So again, this is again a larger shade tree, canopy tree. These are understory trees, but larger ones, and these are understory trees, but smaller in container sizes. So and again, also the goal here was to protect and preserve, the existing trees. So trying to stay out of the drip line, just outside of
existing trees that are not maples.
Right. The Norway maples, right? That are in good condition, should be protected and preserved. And so that's what this height, these dotted represent. And this is based on the Arbus report. And we didn't take the Arbus report, we use it as a guide. There are some trees that were in fair condition or needed to be removed, and we kept them because they were native and they were in fair condition. So we took a different lens at how we approach that. So again, here, these are existing trees, 1 to remain, 2 to remain here. This is a new canopy tree right in here. This is another new canopy tree in here. Then 3 evergreens in the corner here. These are smaller canopy trees here and here. This dash line, these are understory trees, again, like shadblows or dogwoods.
So, Lucille, when were you see where number 229 is, and you said there's a canopy tree? Doesn't 229 doesn't that number indicate an existing tree?
Yeah, but so what I did, Marianne, is that 229 was probably a Norway maple and is coming out. So the only trees that of value that have been left are the ones that are highlighted in this rounded dashed line.
So where there's a number and there's not a circle around
right.
It down.
So one way to make this easier for the future or final drawing perhaps is turn off the ones that are in the buffer that are not going to remain, and keep the ones like I have identified in the larger dash lines, because when we do planting around these trees, we don't want to damage the root zone. So keeping them, any plantings to the outside of the root zone is important.
So one quick comment to follow up, Mr. Chairman, on Lucille's presentation. You used the phrase hodgepodge, and I know you didn't mean it in a derogatory fashion.
No, I didn't.
I know.
It looks like scrambled eggs when you take
and that's what I want to comment on for the record. It looks busy. I know one of the other commenters referred to it as a very dense plan. It is. It's dense and it's not a hodgepodge, because Lucille and Suzanne spent a great deal of time figuring out the right way to do this. And that's why there is a depiction and illustration of so much activity in terms of planting. It was done with care and thought. And I just want the record to be clear that there's not a lot of shapes here for the fun of it. It was done with a lot of thought and design sense in mind.
What happens, Lucille, if you divide it into pieces so that it can be, bigger? Do you know what I mean? So it could be, you know how sometimes when it's a great big subdivision, they have separate pages for each part? Does that work? I'm just trying, because it really is hard to read, and
But I guess the question I have, Marianne, is what is the goal and objective? Because if the graphic representation is, conceptual, and it's really this plant schedule that is the shopping list, if you will, because this house may be, who knows how this may be designed or shaped or what have you, and it may be where that right in this area that maybe right here we need more evergreen, and so these get shifted over and these get moved over there. So that what I was trying to do is just fill in to make it, Suzanne and our team goal, if you will, was to make this a canopied woodland and figure out how to do that. So I think if I turned off some of the numbers of the trees that were not going to remain, that probably would help.
I'm just thinking about the person who they buy lot 1, and then they're given this and say, this is the plan, you got to work with it. Are they going to be able to work with it?
Yeah, but that'll come with the final site plan approval. I think they're going to hire a landscape architect, I would imagine, to help them walk through this, and they're going to be able to understand the plan much better. And so it is, and to David's point, and it is that while it is dense planting, there are 114 trees being proposed between the 3 lots. Lot 1 has a total
Say that number again.
114.
114, but lot 1 has a total of 68 trees being proposed.
And Marianne, let me ask one question that might help, I hope, allay your concern, and it's really a question for Suzanne. When I looked at this, I did the same thing that you and the chairman did, which is, wow, there's so much going on here. How do you decipher this? And Lucille told me 2 things. One, she said, during the meeting, I can walk people through it and I think it'll come to life. And Lucille, you did a terrific job of explaining the representation. But the more important thing she said to me was, David, you don't have a trained eye. You don't know how to read this kind of plan. Suzanne and I look at these plans all the time. And a landscape architect, this doesn't look hodgepodgey or dense. It looks like a landscape plan. So if I'm the village, I would commend you to ask Suzanne, if she can read this, then I think you all are safe and protected.
Suzanne, you got any comment with that challenge?
I think I can read this, and I agree. Normally, you would not do a planting plan at this scale. This is, I believe, 30 or 40 scale.
It's 30
and
scale.
You do a planting plan at 10 scale. But I think the idea here is
getting it,
yeah. Okay. But again, the more detailed, the farther along in the process, the more detailed the plan. So right now, this is the conceptual plan. At this scale, it is conveying that this is a dense and varied planting. So I think that it does the job. The summary is, the whole point here was that it's conceptual. The summary is what really kind of, brings it down to a quantifiable, project. And if there's one thing we could do, maybe Lucille, is just work on maybe playing with changing out some of the tree symbols, in the line weights of them to kind of make them read a little simpler.
Sure.
I think you could actually do a lot with that.
Well, to me, it's the ground cover, which is the filtration aspect, is done well, and the canopy needs to be adjusted to allow for that growth to grow. And no one wants to see a vegetative wall. And my favorite word is punctuated, natural looking presentation of trees and evergreens. And I think you achieved that. And commend both of the consultant and Suzanne for coming up with this plan. It looks good to me. Thank you both.
Thank you, Chairman.
We have nothing else affirmative to present. We're happy to answer any questions.
Well, let me ask, let me poll the board if they have anything they specifically want to see or ask. Mike Smith,
I have nothing further.
Dan,
No comments at this point, Caesar. Thank you.
Laurie,
I'm good for now. Thank you.
and Kevin.
No, thank you.
Okay, before I ask for public comment, I want to make the public aware that after we go to public comment, we're going to do the EAF Part 2. There's 11 questions, and the board will be going over those questions and answering them. If anybody from the public wants to comment on that EAF, environmental assessment form, this is the opportunity. Okay, so let's open it up for public comment. Sarah?
Yep, Chet Kerr is raising his hand to speak.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, this is Chet Kerr, the Greater Irvington Land Trust, and I thank the board again for allowing me to speak. I seem to be getting some feedback. I'm not sure what that feedback is, but I would thank the board for letting me speak. A couple of questions. I obviously have seen I see the new conceptual landscape plan. Some preliminary questions. In the letter I sent to the planning board, I had made some suggested or raised some possible changes to the conservation buffer easement agreement. I don't know whether they have been, they are going to be part of the buffer agreement or not. That's question number one.
Well, let's deal with them one at a time. Mary Ann, you want to answer that?
Well, yeah, some of the changes were incorporated. I don't know if you want me to go through them one by one. Mostly they were language changes. And they were mostly, there's terrible.
Somebody has an open mic.
Yeah, that feedback is, Chad, is that yours?
I don't know. I don't never had this feedback before. I'm not sure what that is.
I don't know where this coming from. I don't know if you recall well enough what was in your letter, but what I can do is go through. There's not too many changes in the conservation buffer agreement, but I could say what they are, and then would that help you?
It would be very helpful.
Okay. One is that, okay, I had a couple language changes myself. Hold on. One was, you added some language about sale or transfer that except is expressly provided herein. That change was picked up. And then about the application of herbicides and pesticides, we added that it had to be approved by the village's landscape consultant, which had been a previous draft. I don't know what happened to it. I mean, maybe it was in one thing and not the other. So that was added. I recall there you had some stuff about referring to best management practices for the pollinator protection, and that was not added because Suzanne believed that it was covered by the sentence, noxious weeds and invasive species shall be controlled using least destructive best management practices. And those would incorporate pollinator ones. Couple of times you asked for language to be made consistent because sometimes it said grantor and assigns or whatever. That was all fixed. I think that's it. Chad, can you remember? Without getting the letter in front of me.
Yeah, I guess I'd have to look at the agreement as said. It sounds like what I was most concerned about, it sounds like that Mary Ann, you and David looked at them and hopefully incorporated them as you saw fit. That's what I was most concerned about. So thank you.
Right. There were a couple language, a couple of things you suggested that, whether it would be instead of this or something, sometimes we took them, sometimes we didn't, use our language. But anyway, yes.
Okay. So my other comment is obviously the conceptual landscape plan that I think part of my concern about it was it sounds like some of the graphics got lost, and that hopefully has been rectified. Two things, yeah, and that I'm glad to hear that. Two things that I would
Dave, keep in mind, not Dave, Chuck, that
Chet.
we have a sentence someplace on the plans that even if the graphics are not clear, the chart is the dominant prevailing must do, and the graphics are just that, graphics.
Right. I get that. I get that. So two other comments, if I can. One is, well, three comments actually. One is, I appreciate that this is a busy document, but landscape architects can understand it, and I'm not a landscape architect, so I will refer to them. I think that in thinking about future possible lot owners, though, the one point where it's very hard to figure this out, either from the graphics or from the chart that's added in there, is exactly, and this may be somewhere else, if it is, that's helpful, but exactly which of the existing trees in the buffer are under this plan going to be removed. And the only way I could determine that was by looking at the plan and seeing that the existing tree didn't have a dashed circle around it. And if there's some other way of clarifying that, just so that, you know, there's, as the board may well be aware, that in the Devon property across the pathway, there has been some challenges as they've taken down trees and stuff like that. And I think everybody would like to make sure that any future landowner, you know, knows what they can do and shouldn't do under this conceptual plan. So that's question number one. Two.
Before we move on to that, Suzanne, you want to answer that? Suzanne, you there?
She's here.
I am. I'm unmuting. I'm sorry. I don't disagree that it is hard to see what trees are remaining and are being removed. And perhaps there could be an existing trees plan with a schedule of the trees that are in the conservation easement area for clarity, so that for the comparison of what is existing with what is proposed. I think that might add to clarity. So that would be an additional sheet, but the information is here, you know, so it's a matter of turning the correct layers on and, you know, having another drawing.
Mr. Chairman, just following, Suzanne said exactly what I was hoping she would, which is we'll have Lucille turn off the layers and just run a print of the trees to be removed. And Chet, we appreciate the comment. I can't speak to other property owners. I can tell you that Marvera has absolutely no desire to see trees removed that are not supposed to be removed. So we agree that there should be a plan that a contractor, be it my clients or anyone else, can easily follow on tree removal. So Lucille, please, if you would heed Suzanne's advice and generate a plan before we come back for final plat approval that shows specifically the trees that are coming out.
And David, let me say, I apologize. I don't know if his feedback's me, but I, as I've said in my letter, I appreciate the approach that Marvera has taken on this, and I'm just wanting to help future landowners make sure they know what you have worked so hard to accomplish here. That's all. So that's great. That's great to hear. So
I'm just not, Chet, let me interrupt a second because I want to correct something or modify maybe something David said, is not when it comes back for final site plan approval. I'm expecting this for the next meeting because the board is not expecting to vote on the preliminary site plan approval tonight because the modified conservation modified landscape plan, everybody just start tonight. So I don't think we should vote on the limited site plan tonight. I think it should be at the next meeting, and hopefully we would have that picture depiction before that meeting.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And be clear, essentially that the maples are coming down because they're invasive. They really, according to Suzanne, they just don't do anything that's positive for this property.
And I understand that, and I don't dispute that whatsoever. The second point I want to make is in the plans that have been filed on December 22nd, I think only in the conceptual landscape plan was there representation of a fence in the conservation buffer. And I don't see that in this new representation.
It was
That's
taken
because
out.
we told them to take it out.
And so does that mean there will be no fence in the conservation buffer?
No, that doesn't mean that. It means that the conservation language says there can be a fence, but it has to be approved by the planning board at the time.
Okay.
We just didn't want to show it in this plan because we don't know what it looks like. And it needs to be reviewed in itself at a later date when the property owner proposes it, if he does propose it.
And just so I'm clear, will that be something that would be reviewed by the planning board as part of final site development?
No,
No, at any point, on the way it's drafted, and if at any point, let's say they get final site plan approval and later on want to put up a fence, it's still got to be reviewed by the planning board. You can't have a fence there unless it's reviewed by the planning board.
Okay, I guess my question is that fence review will not be part of the limited site development approval. It will be later in the process. Got it. Okay. And then my only final question, and this is both for Lucille and
make sure this is the final question. I'm going to hold it to you.
That's fine. It is my final question. And that is, obviously, this conceptual landscape plan anticipates that certain trees will be removed and new plantings will be put in. Is it somehow, I raise the concern of making sure that whoever looks at this in the future understands if you're going to remove these Norway maples, for example, that requires a replacement by all these wonderful trees that Lucille
Dan, pick up the phone.
in the middle of it.
Dan.
And whether or not that is that clear that all these wonderful trees that are represented here are in fact going to be put in as you take trees down? And I'm not sure I'm being clear on my point, but I want to make sure that that's clear.
Someplace, and I got to ask Mary Ann where, but someplace in all the verbiage here, there's is the fact that a building permit to build a house or build anything will not be issued until the landscape plan is in place. So that would be an answer to your question, that they would have to take down and implement the landscaping plan before they get a permit to build anything.
And just so I'm, again, Caesar, just so I'm clear, that would require, if implement the landscape plan, that would require both removing the Norway maples as appropriate, but also then putting in the plantings that have been listed on the summary of plant materials per lot. Is that an accurate description?
In my mind, yes.
Okay.
Mary Ann, do we have that? I know we talked about it several times. In some place there's.
Well, it was one of the conditions of the limited site development plan approval, that no building permit could be issued until the plantings were done in the conservation buffer. I'm not sure if it's in the conservation buffer as well.
Well, it goes on further. I think there was another sense. Not only was it completed, but it had to be reviewed and accepted by the village landscape architect that it was done according to this plan.
Yeah, let me. I've got that approval here, but since we're not voting on it tonight, I didn't have it there handy. Just give me a minute and I'll find it. Okay, before a building permit may be issued for any of the approved lots, the portion of the conservation buffer on such lot must be improved in accordance with the approved landscape plan, subject to review and confirmation by the village landscape consultant.
Okay, that addresses my question. So Caesar, that's all my only questions. Let me just leave it with this. I appreciate very much the opportunity to have participated in this process, and I will continue to participate in this process. But I just, again, appreciate the board's careful thinking about this, and I appreciate Marvera's careful thinking about this. I think that's wonderful. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, because many of your issues in the letter were helpful, and Mary Ann and our landscape people, reacted accordingly. And I think we came up with the cooperation of our applicant. Looks like it looks like a great plan to me so far. Okay, Sarah, is there anybody else out in the public? We had I should note that there was a letter from a Mr. Hardy at 2 Palliser. The gist of his letter was that we should be more specific today as opposed to leaving things later. And that's not the nature of the process. I know Mr. Hardy, I think I recall him when he commented on a pool in his neighbor's backyard. And he was very helpful then, and his comments are very helpful, but it's at the wrong time in the process. And we recognize them as good comments, but they would be more appropriate when a lot comes in for eventual development, when a lot owner comes in with eventual development. Sarah, anybody out there?
Nobody else is raising their hand to speak, and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay, based on the presentation by the public, does the board have any further comment? Mike?
No further comments.
Dan? Dan, unmute.
No comments, Caesar. Thank you.
Lori?
No comments, thank you.
And Kevin?
No, thanks.
Okay, I think it's time now we're going to go over the environmental assessment form, part 2, impact assessment. I will go, there's 11 questions, and then there's answers no or moderate to large. I'll start with number 1, obviously. Will the proposed action create a material conflict with no adopted land use plan or zoning regulations? Now, I'll give you my thought, and then I'll ask the board if anyone thinks differently. I would say no or small impact may occur for number 1. If you're all reading along with me, I hope you are. If not, you'll have to pay attention to the way I read it. Any comment other than no for number 1? Okay. Number 2, will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of use of land? Well, there's some change in use, but not much in the intensity. It is a residential area. I say no. Anybody have any comment on the board? Other than no? Speak up. Okay. Number 3, will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community? Now, the existing community is residential, and this is residential. It's not an apartment house or condominium. So I would say no. Anybody disagree with the no on number 3? Number 4, will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics that caused the establishment of a critical environmental area? Mary Ann, I don't think we have that.
No.
So
I mean, I think technically the village is in it because of the Hudson River, but this has no effect on the Hudson River. So
okay.
that should be no.
Anybody disagree with number 4 as a no?
No.
Number 5, will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkway? The only thing here, there might be a change in traffic. There are going to be three different potential of 3 homes that will have cars. Keep in mind, this property was originally designed and the road was originally designed for, Dave, correct me if I got the number wrong, for 14 townhouses. So three units, it would be minimal impact. So I would say no. Anybody have any thought on other than no? Number 6, will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and it fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities? Well, obviously it's going to use energy. There's 3 new units. It does not require any new utility poles or new anything other than what's there. So I would say no. Anybody have a different opinion than no? Okay, number 7, will the proposed action impact existing public/private water supplies? They're connecting to the existing water system, potentially. 3 homes in our system is really negative. I would say no to that. Minimal impact. Public or private wastewater treatment facilities, I would say no. That this goes to the Yonkers Sewage Treatment Plant, which is a 120 million gallon plant operating at about 100 million. So I would say minimal impact. No. Anybody have a different opinion of no on number 7? Number 8, will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources? Now, there's the tea house there, and the area is aesthetic area because of the nature of the pond and the surrounding woods. However, we went through this evening and many other meetings the aesthetic remediation with the planting zone and the conservation easement. And the conservation easement has maintenance requirements. And if one thinks about the magnitude and the duration and likelihood of anything happening, I would say the mitigations that we have incorporated here and the applicant has provided and that what the village has required more than mitigate any adverse other than minimal going on. So I would say no on aesthetic resources. Comment? No. Number 9, will the proposed action result in an adverse change to natural resources, wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora, and fauna? State law requires the new drainage from, say, the roof or driveway to be retained on site, and the surface runoff on the pervious areas, the lawn, say, we have, again, the vegetative conservation easement with its with the vast flora and fauna that was provided for treatment and vegetation uptake that we spent an exhaustive amount of time perfecting. And I think we've reached that level that this would be a minimal impact to the pond or to the area. I would say no. Any objection to the no on number 9? No. Okay. Will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential of erosion, flooding, drainage problems? The same explanation as number 9. State law in the village requires all the pervious areas, the roof and driveway, to be retained on site. And so I believe anything would be minimal. No. And number 10, does anybody disagree with the no? Good. Will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health? I think hazard is a strong word. I don't believe I believe the precautions have been taken to minimize to next to nothing on a hazard to environmental resources. Again, we have an extensive mitigation plan that we spent an exhaustive amount of time putting together, and I think that's adequate. So the answer to this would be a minimal, which is another no for number 11. Anybody disagree with that? Okay, that completes the impact assessment form. Again, I'm going to poll the board to make sure. Mike, we went through these 11 questions. Do you have any issues with any of the no answers on the 11 questions? Mike?
I do not.
Dan?
I do not as well, Caesar.
Laurie?
I do not.
And Kevin?
I do not.
Okay, and obviously I did the checklist, so I do not disagree with the no's that I already wrote down. Okay, so with that done, Mary Ann, do we have a resolution regarding the impact statement, environmental assessment?
Right, I believe, given that all the answers were no, you could do a negative declaration. So I have here a Village of Irvington Planning Board negative declaration under SEQA. Whereas on June 3rd, 2020, the planning board determined that a 4.2 acre parcel on Castle Road owned by Marvera Corporation has a site capacity of 3 lots. And whereas since July 2021, the planning board has been considering the application of Marvera for subdivision approval and limited site development plan approval of the parcel. And whereas the southern border of the parcel is adjacent to Halsey Pond Park and the pathway surrounding Halsey Pond, and the eastern border abuts the access way from Palliser Road to Halsey Pond Park. And whereas in the process of its review, the planning board has been focused, among other issues, on the impacts of development of the 3 lots on Halsey Pond and Halsey Pond Park, as well as on the access way from Palliser Road to Halsey Pond Park. And whereas on October 23rd, 2021, the planning board conducted a site visit of the parcel and the access way from Palliser Road and the village's trailway along Halsey Pond Park. And whereas the plans submitted in support of the application have been modified, 1, to create a conservation buffer along the southern border of the parcel and along the eastern border of the parcel, and 2, to impose limits on development of the 3 lots created by the subdivision that are more restrictive than the zoning code's required setbacks. And whereas the application includes a conservation buffer easement agreement and a conceptual landscape plan, both carefully developed to protect Halsey Pond and to preserve the scenic, historical, and natural forested character of the surrounding area. And whereas the proposed action is an unlisted action under the State Environmental Quality Review Act. And whereas the planning board has reviewed the short environmental assessment form part 2 impact assessment and determined that the proposed action will not have any significant adverse environmental impacts for the following reasons. 1, the proposed action does not conflict with the comprehensive plan, updated comprehensive plan, and zoning regulations for the 1F40 zoning district in which it lies. 2, the proposed action will result in a small change in the use of land in that the land is now vacant, and if fully built out will result in 3 single-family houses. It should be noted that the 4.42 acre parcel was previously approved for 14 townhouses and tennis courts. 3, the proposed action will not impair the character or quality of the existing community. It may result in the development of 3 houses in a residential district. 4, the proposed action will not have any impact on environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of a critical environmental area. 5, the proposed action may result in either no or a very small impact on traffic in that what is now vacant land may be developed with 3 single-family residences. 6, the proposed action may cause a minimal increase in the use of energy because what is now vacant land may be developed with 3 single-family houses. 7, the proposed action may result in 3 single-family residences that will connect to existing public water and public sewer systems with minimal impacts on the 2 public systems. 8, the proposed action will not impair the character of important historic, archaeological, or architectural resources. nor will it impair aesthetic resources because the conservation buffer required as a condition of approval, along with the creation of primary building areas and secondary building areas, which are more restrictive than the zoning code's required setbacks, will protect the views from Halsey Pond Park, the Halsey Pond Trailway, and the access way to Halsey Pond from Palliser Road. 9, the proposed action will not result in an adverse change to natural resources, including Halsey Pond, because all water flow that might result from development of the lots must be contained on sites. The use of organic and inorganic fertilizers is prohibited, and the use of herbicides and pesticides is limited. Additionally, the conservation buffer planting improvements are expected to act as a vegetated biofilter to slow and trap runoff and allow settling of particulate matter and uptake of nutrients. Removing Norway maple trees which prevent ground cover from being established and removing non-native and invasive species will allow establishment of a layered planting of native herbaceous ground cover, trees and shrubs to restore diversity and improve habitat in the buffer and significantly protect Halsey Pond. 10, the proposed action will not result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems. 11, the proposed action will not create any hazard to environmental resources because all water flow that might result from development of the lots, that's really the same as 9, so I won't repeat that. I have the same thing on for 11. Now therefore be it resolved that the planning board hereby issues a negative declaration under the State Environmental Quality Review Act.
All right, you know, Marianne, I just thought of it as we're going through this and I'm looking at this. This requires a signature, and I presume it's my signature. Should the resolution include a whereas that Cesar Manfredi, the chairman of the planning board, is authorized to sign for the board?
No, because what we're going to have to do is, in besides you signing the 3, is you'll have the 2 where the page 2 where all the boxes are marked no. And then it says, check this box if you've determined, and you check this box if you've determined that the proposed action will not result in any significant environment, and they did. So I don't think that's necessary.
Well, I'm signing it for the agency. All right.
Yeah, that's okay.
And
You're signing it for.
When I do my co-op work, I get authorized as the president to sign certain documents like the tax returns and stuff.
If you want to authorize, you can, but it's unnecessary.
Okay. Okay, so we're done. Any comments from the board on the voluminous? Oh, by the way, while we're voting, you can get a drink of water because there's another resolution. Mike, do you have any comment on the resolutions?
No.
Dan?
No comments here.
Lori?
No, thank you.
Kevin?
No, thank you.
And I have no comment, and I will be signing this document and drop it off at Village Hall because it needs an original signature.
So, but they all need to vote. There was a decision that has a vote. They have to all just vote and then authorize Sarah to sign for them.
Okay. We got to go through that again. Mike, you,
yeah, just vote on the resolution I read.
Okay, Mike, you want to vote on that and authorize Sarah?
I approve the resolution, authorize Sarah to vote for me, to sign for
Dan?
me.
I approve of the resolution and authorize Sarah to sign for me.
Lori?
I approve the resolution and authorize Sarah to sign.
And Kevin?
I vote yes and authorize Sarah to sign.
All right, Caesar votes yes on the resolution, and I guess I'll be, I don't know, she's
There's 2 documents here, Caesar. There's the resolution, like all the other resolutions.
Okay.
And then there's the secret one.
Okay, I vote for the resolution, yes. And as chairman, I will be signing the assessment form. Okay, the next on the possibilities, do we have a resolution prepared for limited preliminary subdivision approval?
Yeah, for preliminary subdivision approval. Again, as I mentioned.
Preliminary
earlier-
subdivision plot approval.
Right. Right. This is just for the subdivision approval, not the limited site development plan approval, which will wait until the next meeting. Okay.
Right, and the next meeting we'll have two proposals on the agenda. The final subdivision plat and the limited site development plan. Those two items would be next month, but right now we're going to consider the preliminary subdivision plot approval. And Mary Ann, you have a resolution.
Right. Just so everybody knows, this is kind of on the subdivision. This is the main thing because the vote on next month would almost be pro forma. It's just required by our code that you have to vote on the preliminary and the final, even when they're exactly the same. All right.
Well, it just as further explanation, the subdivision plot, see, the county health department has to approve subdivisions and they look at the plot plan. And that's what that document that we're voting on right now is something the county approves. All subdivisions are subject to the county health department.
Okay. Whereas in 1979, Marvera Corporation received I'm sorry, a lot of this stuff is repetitive. It received site development plan approval inter alia to build 14 townhouses and tennis courts on a 4.42 acre parcel it owned on Castle Road. And whereas in conjunction with that approval and the approval of the adjacent Marvera single family residential subdivision, Marvera dedicated to the village of Irvington an approximately 14.2 acre area, including what is now known as Halsey Pond, for park preservation and open space purposes to be enjoyed by the community in perpetuity. And whereas 30 years later, Marvera applied to the planning board to build the townhouses, but the application was rejected because it did not comply with existing zoning laws. And whereas Marvera challenged the village's decision in litigation, which was finally decided by the appellate division of the Supreme Court of the state of New York, which upheld the village's determination that the 30-year-old approval had expired. And whereas in May 2020, Marvera applied to the planning board for site capacity determination, subdivision approval, and limited site development plan approval for the parcel under the current village code. And whereas on June 3rd, 2020, the planning board determined that the parcel had a site capacity of 3 lots. And whereas the documents submitted in support of the May 2020 application for subdivision and limited site development plan approval showed that the water main serving the 3 proposed lots and other lots included in the 1979 site development plan approval was constructed, located, and operational on the parcel, not in the street where it had been approved by the village in 1979. And whereas in August 2020, village staff advised Marvera that it must submit proof from the Westchester County Department of Health that DOH approved the location of the water line outside of the street. And whereas on April 7th, 2021, DOH sent a letter advising Marvera and the village that it could not issue an approval for construction of the water main in that location. And whereas in July 2021, Marvera submitted a new revised application for subdivision and limited site development plan approval, which sought approval for 3 lots off fronting on Castle Road and backing up to Halsey Pond Park. And whereas the new revised application shows that the existing water main would be abandoned and a new public water main would be installed in the Castle Road right-of-way. And whereas a portion of the existing water main runs along a portion of the neighboring parcel 4 Castle Road, owned by Barry and Patricia Litkowski, and relocation of the water main will require access to the Litkowski property, therefore requiring a temporary construction access agreement. And whereas because the proposed lots border on the village pathway surrounding Halsey Pond, as well as the village's access way from Palliser Road to Halsey Pond Park, the planning board directed Marvera to create a conservation buffer along the rear lot lines of the 3 lots and along the eastern lot line of Lot 1, which directive Marvera complied with. And whereas Marvera and the planning board have come to an agreement on the terms of the conservation buffer easement agreement, the text of which is annexed to this resolution is Exhibit 1, and which will require approval of the Board of Trustees. And whereas a sanitary sewer main owned and operated by the village of Irvington traverses the parcel, as well as a portion of the neighboring parcel, Forecastle Road, owned by the Lutkowskis, but no written easement could be located. And whereas Marvera and the village, and according to Marvera, the Lutkowskis have come to an agreement on the terms of the sewer line easement agreement, the text of which is annexed to this resolution is Exhibit 2, which easement will enable said sewer line to remain in its current location. And whereas the Lutkowskis have been using a 950 square foot, approximately 12-foot wide portion of the Marvera parcel to access their driveway on Forecastle Road, but no written easement exists. And whereas Marvera has advised the planning board that it has come to an agreement with the Lutkowskis on the terms of a written driveway easement. And whereas Han Engineering reviewed various plans and supporting material submitted by Marvera, as well as the proposed preliminary subdivision plat, and in memoranda dated July 6th, August 30th, October 5th, November 2nd, and November 26th, 2021, listed a number of items, all of which were addressed in subsequent submissions. And whereas the planning board held a public hearing on the application on July 7th, September 1st, October 6th, November 3rd, December 1st, 2021, and January 5th, 2022. And whereas the planning board received extensive correspondence and public input from village residents and organizations and from Scenic Hudson, Inc., all of which it considered carefully. And whereas on October 23rd, 2021, the planning board conducted a site visit of the parcel and the access way from Palliser Road and the village's trailway along Halsey Pond. And whereas the planning board hereby determines the development of the proposed new lots will generate the need for additional recreational facilities in the village, but suitable recreational facilities cannot properly be located on the subdivision plat. Therefore, a $30,000 fee in lieu of parkland, $15,000 for each of 2 additional lots, must be paid as a condition of subdivision approval. And whereas the documents submitted by Marvera in support of its application for preliminary subdivision approval satisfy the requirements of the relevant section of the village code. And whereas the planning board reviewed the State Environmental Quality Review Act environmental assessment form for the proposed subdivision and limited site development plan approvals and determined that there would be no adverse environmental impacts and therefore issued a negative declaration under SECRA. Now therefore be it resolved that the planning board approves the preliminary subdivision plat entitled Preliminary Subdivision Plat Proposed for Marvera Corporation, prepared by T.C. Merritt's land surveyor, subject to the following conditions. 1, prior to the planning board chairperson signing the final plat, Marvera shall submit proof of approval and endorsement of the plat by the Westchester County Department of Health. 2, prior to the planning board chairperson signing the final plat, the $30,000 fee in lieu of parkland required by section 188-20 of the village code must be paid to the village. 3, prior to the planning board chairperson signing the final plat, Marvera shall submit proof that the conservation buffer easement agreement was approved and executed by the village board of trustees and Marvera, and that the sewer line easement agreement was approved and executed by the village board of trustees, the Lutkowskis and Marvera. 4, prior to the planning board chairperson signing the final plat, Marvera shall submit proof that the driveway easement and a temporary construction access agreement were executed by Marvera and the Lutkowskis or any subsequent owners of Forecastle Road. Within 30 days after the final subdivision plat is filed with the Westchester County Clerk, the conservation buffer agreement in substantially the same form as Exhibit 1 annexed, and the sewer line easement agreement in substantially the same form as Exhibit 2 annexed must be filed in the office of the Westchester County Clerk Division of Land Records. 6, within 30 days after the final subdivision plat is filed with the Westchester County Clerk, an easement for the shared driveway must be filed in the office of the Westchester County Clerk Division of Land Records. 7, all area requirements of the zoning code must be complied with, except primary and secondary buildings as defined in this paragraph shall be constructed only within the primary building area and secondary building area respectively, as delineated on the buildable areas plan, except that secondary buildings may also be constructed within the primary building area. For purposes of this resolution, primary buildings shall include dwelling, garage, and paved parking area, and secondary buildings shall include any building or structure permitted under the village zoning code other than those specified as primary buildings. 8, to the extent the definition of primary building or secondary building contained in this resolution conflicts with any definition set forth in the Irvington zoning code, the definitions set forth herein shall govern for purposes of determining compliance of development upon the lots with this limited site development plan approval. The precise boundaries and limitations of the primary building area and secondary building area may be modified during final site development plan approval process at the request of an applicant, provided the planning board in its sole discretion determines that the modification is necessary and appropriate based on such factors such as site conditions, visibility, construction feasibility, engineering, environmental mitigation, or similar factors, and that such modification will not be detrimental to Halsey Pond and or Halsey Pond Park. There's only 3 more. The conservation buffer as delineated on the preliminary subdivision plat shall be subject to the terms and conditions of the conservation buffer easement agreement between Marvera Corporation and the Village of Irvington. 11, before a building permit may be issued for any of the approved lots, the portion of the conservation buffer on such lot must be approved in accordance with the approved landscape plan, subject to review and confirmation by the village landscape consultant. And finally, the deed or any other document conveying any of the lots created by this subdivision shall contain language substantially as follows. This property is subject to the conservation buffer easement agreement included as a condition of subdivision approval and of the limited site development plan approved by the planning board on whatever date 2022. That's it.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Okay, I'm going to poll the board to vote on that resolution.
Point
Mike,
of information before you do, I recommend that you close the public hearing before you vote on the preliminary plat. You have a preliminary plat hearing open.
go ahead, Mary Ann.
Yeah, David, you could technically, but the public hearing is still open on a limited site development plan approval.
I fully understand that, and I didn't ask that the limited site development plan approval hearing be closed.
Yeah,
It's
we
just-
didn't have them as separate ones, but if you want to close the public hearing on the preliminary subdivision plat, that's okay, Caesar. But clarify it's just on that.
Okay, to be clear, we're going to close the public hearing on the preliminary subdivision plat. Okay,
You can roll that into the same resolution as the adoption of the resolution.
We can just do that separately.
you don't like my words?
They're fine, Caesar. They're just fine.
Okay, the hearing is closed as stated for the preliminary subdivision plot approval process. The vote. Mike,
I approve the resolution and authorize Sarah to sign for me.
Dan,
I too approve the resolution and authorize Sarah to sign for me.
Lori,
I approve and authorize Sarah to sign.
Kevin,
I approve and authorize Sarah to sign on my behalf.
and Caesar approves and authorizes Sarah to sign for me on the resolution. Mary Ann, thank you. That was exhaustive reading for those 2 documents.
The reading was easy. It was the writing it that was tough.
You know, it was a lot of phone calls, I'm sure. I think we're done with this process. We'll be meeting again to go over the 2 things I said, which is the
Caesar, one
limited.
more point of, Caesar?
Well, go ahead while I look for what I'm looking for.
I just want to make it clear that Mary Ann has explained that we need to notice and schedule and conduct the public hearing at the next meeting. So we will be back at the February meeting technically for a public hearing on the final subdivision plat and the completion of the public hearing on the limited site development plan. So I just wanted your board to know that you're actually also scheduling a public hearing for the February meeting on the final plat.
Well, I found what I was looking for, and it's exactly what you said.
Trying to help you out there.
Okay, Mary Ann, anything else to add to that?
No, I'm done.
Thank you all. And honestly, a tremendous amount of thanks to Mary Ann, who has dealt with all of us, as well as Suzanne, over the last 2 weeks throughout the holidays. There has been a great deal of back and forth and above and beyond the call, Mary Ann. So we very much appreciate it. And Suzanne, thank you as well. We'll see you all next month.
Well,
Everybody
before
stay
we
healthy
go,
and well.
I want to thank the public and particularly the land trust. And there was something close to 300 names on a couple of documents. One sentence thoughts, which were very provocative and interesting and worth looking at. Was not a futile exercise by the citizens of Irvington. We did look at them and incorporated as much as we could. And credit to your consultants. They did a good job, Dave.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a
Okay,
great
we're done
night.
with this.
You.
All right, thank you. That was number 3. Moving on to number 4. 2021-37, 61 Butterwood Lane West.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good evening to the board. Hope everybody's doing well. So I'm actually the homeowner, as my architect, who is Steven Sakan Architect, is having connectivity issues. So before we go ahead, I just want
I'm
to make sure.
sorry, he's having what kind of issues?
Connectivity issues. I think his whole kind of Verizon system is down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Electronic issues, okay.
Electronic issues, yeah. So before we go
I'm
ahead.
glad it's not, it sounded almost like he had COVID or something.
I mean, these days you never know. But before we went ahead, I just want to make sure there's no objections from the board with kind of me representing myself as the homeowner.
Go right ahead.
Okay. So from the prior board meetings, as well as kind of the most recent comments that we received from the board and Han Engineering, as well as kind of the landscape architect, there's 2 or 3 kind of remaining issues that we've been working to close out over the last kind of several board meetings. So one is the coverage. So I think there was one kind of remaining issue with Han Engineering, specifically related to the calculations of the coverage for surrounding properties. I believe our architect has connected with Doug at Han Engineering and has resolved that particular issue. So we should be good on that front. Realize that we still need to go to ZRB for kind of the exemption on the overall kind of coverage ratio and being over the kind of the standard amount. So that was one issue. The second issue was the screening, and let me go ahead and share my screen. And apologies for it's my first time doing this. So, okay, do folks see my the drawing?
Yeah.
Okay. So the second issue was kind of around the screening. So some of the content, the latest comments from the landscape architect were, number one, the shrubs directly around the pool and deck area create some concerns from a non-climbable barrier situation. That actually might have been from Han. So that's one issue. The second is that the type of vegetation that we proposed in the northeast corner of the property, which is where there's some visibility from Hamilton, as well as some of the kind of from our eastern neighbors. The type of vegetation that we proposed, which was Rheingold arborvitae, was kind of dwarf. It was type form, and we needed to kind of address that. So in order to address this, which I think our architect has already done in the latest drawings that they have, is number one, kind of remove the screening from directly around the pool and deck area, and then replace the arborvitae, which we have here, with skip laurels, which address the kind of type of vegetation. So hopefully that kind of addresses the screening questions. And then from
before you get off the screening, I'm glad you're taking it away from around the pool, because it does have climbing problems with pool protection. And it's incredible height you'd need, 9 feet. If you beefed up the property line parallel to, was that Hamilton? Hamilton Road. Not just at that corner, and work with Susan Nolan on that whole property line, particularly that corner.
Okay.
I think that would be very helpful. And the other thing is, the way the lattice is in the rail, there's some climbing issues that your architect needs to straighten out with the building inspector.
Yeah, so we connected with Ed on those. So all the kind of barrier issues in terms of the lattice, there's a couple other issues that we'll address directly with Ed. So those are definitely noted.
Okay, so there's a ZBA meeting before the next planning board meeting. I think it's okay for you to go to the ZBA and come back with the planting along the property line to Hamilton Road, and that particularly that corner, and to make sure that the building inspector is satisfied that nobody can climb and defeat the protection of falling into the pool by a toddler or youngster.
Okay. And just so I understand, Mr. Chairman, so we would go to zoning for kind of the requisite exemptions that we have, and then will we come back to planning?
Actually, there are variances. Well, yeah.
Right, with the variances, and then we would come back to planning before ARB?
Yes.
Okay. Right. Okay, perfect. And then the other thing, yeah, so we'll address kind of the barrier issues, make sure that we're in line with kind of the state and village code. And then just for what it's worth, we did get, and I think we noted this in the first or second planning board meeting, but we did get letters of support from our neighbors.
Right, I have seen those letters, yes.
Okay. I think those are kind of the remaining issues. Yeah. So I guess at this point, we were hoping kind of for referral to ZRB for the 2 front yard issue, as well as the coverage issue as well.
Well, this screening issue seems to, it's not something new. I mean, the first meeting we had in October 7th, Doug Hahn wrote a letter, screening of the proposed pool should be provided. I'm reading from the letter. And a planting plan prepared by a qualified landscape architect. And the answer was that any additional planting will be installed only as required for screening. Well, we said you needed screening, and the first answer, and seems like we're still at it since October. So try to get it right so we can move on.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I for some reason, I think there was some confusion along the way with the plantings around the pool and deck, which I think would have been better suited around the perimeter to address it. But yeah, duly noted.
Okay. Any comment from the board, Mike?
No, I'm glad that the screening issue seems to be getting resolved.
Dan?
No comment, Caesar.
Lori?
No comment.
Kevin?
Nothing from me. Thank you.
I have no further comment. Sarah, anything from the public?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak, and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay, time to move on. Thank you very much. You did an admirable job in place of I hope he fixes his, and I'm glad he doesn't have the virus. It's only, I guess his computer has a virus.
Better the computer than him.
And the original description of a bug actually was a bug. A cockroach got into a computer and screwed up the electronics. So
Really?
that was a real story as to the origin of bug in the computer.
Wow, that's good.
Let's move on.
Thank you.
And thank you very much. And we'll move on to number 6 with 2021-08, 10 Hancock Place.
49 Field Terrace.
Yeah, 40.
Yeah, did you mean to skip 5?
Oh, I skipped over 5. Sorry. We're going to do 49 Field Terrace. That was my next sheet too. And I guess we got 10 Hancock, all nervous. 49 Field Terrace.
Good evening. Can you see and hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. So Douglas McClure, the architect for Sumit Mohan and Subhani Chandra.
You look like talking heads.
Yeah.
You're a bulletin in the back. Okay, go ahead.
Happy New Year, everyone. So this is the second submission for this project. We brought in as requested, we brought in a arborist who did a report for us, which was included in your package. We had a landscape architect work with that report and come up with a tree replacement and planting plan, and addressed the issues, the civil engineering issues. We received some comments back yesterday, which we actually addressed and sent to Han and to Suzanne Nolan, and I've had some communication with them today. I can go over any part of the drawings that you would like to discuss, but I'm not sure where you want me to start.
All right, my notes indicate that your arborist comments should be on the plans. The trees were not labeled correctly. The beeches were something other than beeches.
Yes, that has all been revised.
The tree protection plan needs to be better articulated, and you have to check with Susan. Need to be more native species than what was proposed.
Correct.
And details of tree planting on a steep slope, which is, can be difficult because obviously it's a steep slope and one side of the roots is deep and the other side is shallow. So there has to be some details on tree planting. So
we have already revised those drawings, and we've sent digital copies to both Doug and Ed and Suzanne, and we will be submitting printed copies, the normal printed copies and thumb drive as well, later this week.
When we get all that at the next meeting, we'll be able to do a resolution. In the interim, you could go to the ZBA because you need a variance.
We need a variance. Okay.
Does anybody want to see the site plan or anything, Mike?
No.
Dan?
I'm all set, thank you.
Laurie?
I'm good, thank you.
Kevin?
No, thanks, Susan.
Okay, all right, Doug, you're all set to go to the ZBA, and we'll see you with the corrected plans according to my notes, and they all have to do with planting trees and not planting trees. So make sure that they're squared away with our landscape architect, Susan Nolan.
We will make sure they are. Thank you very much.
Ed, before you go, Ed and Doug, is there any engineering that he needs to look at?
I had responded, Doug, to your the email, so just make sure all that's cleared up as far as the heights and stuff.
Yeah, I sent something back to you while I was listening to the Marvera presentation, so we can talk about that more tomorrow.
Yeah, some details on the retaining wall. Okay.
Yes.
Ed, you got anything? You're all set?
No.
Okay, we're done. We'll see you next time, and go to the ZBA.
All right, thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Thank you, welcome. Now, number 6, 10 Hancock Place, which is 2021-08.
Hi, good evening.
I heard your voice, but I don't see you.
Oh,
I see him.
you see me?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, good.
Oh, there you go.
Working. Happy New Year, everybody. I hope everyone's feeling well. I apologize for my voice. I'm a little under the weather. Not COVID, but just a regular good old fashioned cold.
So you think.
I tested.
And we wouldn't be able to talk to you if you tested positive tonight.
No, it's well, thankfully Zoom allows us some new opportunities. So yeah, this was just a brief description of what we're looking at here. This was previously approved back in April. It was permitted and
Bring up the
construction
site.
began.
You can bring up the site plan and we can see what you're changing.
Sure, let me share my screen. Can you see that now?
It's okay.
So this was 10 Hancock Place, previously approved pool, hardscape, and some other minor associated changes. We had everything approved, began construction, and realized that our proposed equipment pad for the pool was slightly undersized for some of the equipment that was needed. So we came back with a new proposal to the building department, and subsequently it was pushed back here for approval. So previously, we had a equipment pad that was pushed up against an existing tree and an existing fence here in the western portion of the pool area. And what we found was this was undersized. So what we've done is subsequently, we're moving it to the opposite corner of the yard. We are up against two other setbacks, including the Croton buffer and just the pool setback buffer. So we couldn't keep it on this side, and we didn't want to put it in the center of the yard. So we put it in what we thought was the next best location where we could hide it from everybody, including the public. So presently what we're asking for is a slight increase in ground cover approval. This was a previous variance for site coverage of 23.5% over the allowable, and we're asking to increase it 1.1%, which is subsequently a very minimal increase of about 13 square feet. But I believe this is brought back to you more for location than anything. So that's what we're requesting today, is to slightly increase the size of our equipment pad and then move it to this opposite corner. We received some comments from Han and Susan, which we haven't been able to address, but they're pretty minor. Those comments being the equipment pad should be screened, which presently there's already very dense existing plantings there, but we can increase that as needed and add some more if that is necessary. I have imagery from the owner showing essentially the area in question. You can see the magenta. I'm not sure the exact plant there. You can see how densely planted this is when it is in the spring. So it's already in a position where it's probably not going to be seen from the aqueduct. And then subsequently, the other comments were just to kind of clarify what was existing versus what was proposed. We were showing the old equipment pad so that it could be understood, but it was asked that we remove that in relationship to what the new pad is, which is this here. We just color coded it, but I guess it wasn't clear. So that's
if you could actually, you can leave it there, but just note it as to be removed.
Noted. Thank you.
We're having the same problem with the generator pad. Is the generator there or not there?
No, it is not. So that was something that was
Yeah.
approved and abandoned. So
Okay.
that work
So
is
just
not happening.
change that note also, because
Will do.
it's too close to the propane tank otherwise.
Yo, I guess that's where the confusion was. But I was just trying to show the.
Yeah, no, just change it. Leave them on the plan. Just change the note.
Sounds good.
All right.
So you're taking out the generator pad.
It was never put in place. It was previously approved and the
taking it
work
out of
wasn't
the-
done.
Yeah.
Out of the scope, yes.
And the change in coverage is because this pad is a little bigger than, and that's why you're moving it. You need it bigger.
That is correct.
And the distance from for the equipment to the pool, that's not an issue?
No, not at all. In fact, the distance that's the most challenging is the distance to the propane tank. If the propane tank was in an alternate location, we would need additional above grade conversion equipment, which provides kind of unsightly things in the middle of the yard. So this is better for everybody.
Okay, you need to clarify what's happening to the old pit. It's going to be taken off the plan, and the generator pad is not going to be built.
Correct.
And then I guess you have to come back.
And send us a letter to, have the owner send us a letter on not doing the generator, so we can remove that permit effectively.
So the question I would ask is, presuming that we address these couple of comments, is the next meeting essentially just making sure that we're covering our bases on these couple of open items?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
But Ed made a comment there that we need to know that there's an application for the generator that has to be removed. So it's so we know it's a moot point.
We'll have that pulled or closed, I guess would be.
Yeah, just send us a letter.
Will do.
Thank you.
Where it would count as additional coverage.
Yeah, you'll need to go to the ZBA also for additional coverage.
So that's the one question I would have is, subsequently, does this change our previous resolution for the additional 13 square feet? So that has to be addressed, or?
Well,
you go to ZBA once we have the numbers corrected.
Yeah. They didn't correct the numbers in the chart, Ed.
To be honest, we just didn't understand it because of the verbiage in the green. Now we get it. We just have to confirm the number.
Yeah, you need to correct the coverage numbers so we know exactly what's going on. And then
right. So I just need to update and clarify.
Yeah.
And I think the numbers that I have on number 1 are correct. That's right, right? From our coverage.
I have to 23.5 to 24.6. That's correct. That matches up with our coverage chart was updated.
Yeah.
I just think the confusion was how our diagram was made.
Yeah. Okay. I think the numbers that I got there are okay, but just double check.
Yeah, no, it matches your letter.
Okay.
Okay. All right, we'll see you next time.
So I should send this to ZBA?
No. The numbers are not right. We'd like the numbers to be right when we send it to the ZBA.
My coverage chart is correct and matches.
Caesar, we do have those numbers. It was the diagram on the drawing that we weren't exactly sure. We wanted to make sure that we had the right coverage, but I mean, the numbers that I have do, they are the same.
Yeah, so essentially, just to explain what I did, on the green locations, the existing equipment and the existing generator on the chart was added into the chart to clarify and considered our reductions, which is, here's the generator pad with the -20. And this was what did our updated numbers. I just think the confusion was the pad actually happening or not happening, which I believe that it isn't. So if we could get to ZBA, that'd be great, just so we could avoid another month.
Ed?
Yeah.
You okay?
I'm okay. Just make sure, so let's come back next month with the plan, but make sure you revise the plan on the coverage and for the ZBA application.
Noted. So what I would submit to the ZBA is what I'll submit to you guys for next month.
Well, just make sure that it's clear that those pads are not going in.
Understood.
You could send it to me early if you like to.
Okay, sounds good.
Ed, you have no problem? You're
problem.
okay with going to the ZBA?
Yeah, it's relatively easy now that you explained it.
Okay. All right, ZBA meets before we meet, so we'll have met with them and we'll see you next time.
Good, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
Yep, you too. That was number 6. Moving to the last one, number 7. 11 Hancock Place, 2022-01. Sarah, is there someone out there for 10 Hancock?
Yes,
Yes.
I'm Christina Griffin. Good evening. I'm the architect. I'm here with Lizette Garcia Elias. She's the project designer. And we're going to share the screen with you to show you the drawings. We're here representing Darren and Sukina Klein, who are the owners of 11 Hancock. And what we're here today for is to review drawings for two projects. One is an outdoor kitchen that is going to be built on top of an existing patio at the rear of the house. We're also planning to put a new trellis on top of that for shading of that area. And then the other project is finishing of the attic space, which is an existing space with existing dormers, existing staircase, high ceilings, and we'd like to make it a usable, habitable space with a full bath. I'm going to ask Lizette to put the drawings up and share the screen and take you through the drawings and our FAR calculations.
Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. As Christina mentioned, we are proposing some exterior renovations and finishing the existing attic space. This is a partial patio plan of the space. It's an existing patio, and we're adding an outdoor kitchen. We're not increasing the impervious area of this existing patio. We will be adding a trellis, so there will be some modifications to the existing railing to tie in a new trellis. And these are the elevations to show the equipment that we're proposing. And I'll go to the photos quickly. I'll skip around just so you can see what the existing patio currently looks like. And it's this raised area where the proposed kitchen will be along this back wall, which you can see here. For the attic, it's an existing attic space. It's currently unfinished. And under the village code, if the attic is accessible with a stair and there's a ceiling height of 7 feet 6 or greater, it's considered 100% of the FAR. So we are not increasing the FAR of the home. The space is existing. We are going to replace all of the existing windows to make them egress. They will not change the look or style or feel of the exterior of the home. We are also proposing to add a full bathroom in the attic. In regards to the floor area ratio, I do have the form that the village supplies, but I also did an illustration of each floor. The basement is accounted for 1,309 square feet, which is the area that has that's above 3 feet or greater. The rest of the area is actually below grade. On the first floor, we have 3,294 square feet with the 2-story foyer counting twice for a total of 3,663. And the garage, with the exclusion of the 400 square feet, we have 274 square feet. The second floor, 2,903 square feet. And the existing attic space with a ceiling height greater than 7'6", 935 square feet. Again, the existing floor area remains the same. The house is over the allowable floor area by 20.7%, but again, there is no change to the floor area ratio since we are not adding any mass to the existing home. These are the photos of the house again and the neighbors. And that completes our presentation. If you have any questions.
You didn't go over the coverage. There's quite a few items that were not included in the coverage calculation. Air conditioner pads, there's a framed shed or maybe a brick patio off out there in the upper left.
So this is a a typo. This is a shed back here that's existing. All of these should be included in this. I will look at this again.
I think it was just that there were some undocumented items. If you have our comments, they're listed on there, and we can go over them.
Yeah,
Gazebo, there's gravel over near one of those planters, some of the planter walls.
We'll send you over a survey from 1987 application. There's quite a bit of new coverage shown on that, but between this survey and the survey you sent to us.
In other words,
I also submitted the original survey by the surveyor.
There's coverage items in there that you did not include in your coverage calculation. And
It was undocumented, that's all. So those undocumented ones would be considered as proposed, essentially.
And then you had the one proposed patio walkway, air conditioner pad, but it wasn't reflective in your coverage calculations.
This was previously, we already got approval for the pads. We went to zoning board. So this includes those pads that were added. I didn't consider it as a new because we already received approval for the.
So then you need to update your survey for the next submission.
Okay. So I should be calling these. Okay, understood.
And there's a 16-inch maple, which we saw in one of the pictures by the patio. It's not shown on the plans, and there should be some tree protection there for that.
Okay.
It's right off the patio. One of your backyard pictures showed the tree, but it's not on the plans. Yes. And the tree should be shown on the plans with some tree protection on the plans.
Okay.
No problem.
So
Make sure to add these things.
go back with the coverage numbers cleared up. You can talk to Doug, and they have an outline of what was not included. They're undocumented, but and the undocumented becomes part of the current application.
Okay.
All right.
All exterior work, it's all existing, not anything new that's being proposed. And in regards to the actual patio and attic, there was no comments regarding that.
No. We'll check. We're going to poll the board and ask the public if there's any comment. Mike, you have any comment?
I do not.
Dan?
No comment, Caesar. Thank you.
Lori?
Can you just go back to the picture of the attic for 1 second? I had a question. Can you go back to the one where you show the square footage and the hash marks for the area that's above this, whatever that foot, the 765? Okay. So Caesar, the hash mark there, that doesn't have to get added into FAR.
The existing village code calls for any space that's accessible with a stair and a door and has a ceiling height of 7'6", whether it's finished or unfinished, is included in the FAR. So this is existing and it's unfinished.
Was that up in the top of the code? It's the gross area with the ceiling height. So it's not the ceiling height, it's with the ceiling height. So you need to, although you're not increasing it, it still doesn't affect your application. The number to be correct should show the gross area of the attic, not just the 7'6" area.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, Lori?
Yeah, that was my only question. Thank you.
Okay. Kevin?
Nothing from me. Thanks.
Sarah, anything from the public?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak, and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay. Did you say there's a trellis over the patio? I don't remember seeing that when I looked at it.
We're proposing a new trellis over the patio.
Ed, does that require anything different than any height issues?
They're in
height
the building envelope, so it could be 35 feet high.
Oh, right. I don't think they're going to do that.
I don't think so.
No, it's going to go right here. Yeah. I can show you in the back here. So the trellis is over this area here.
Maybe you should show it on the plans.
Yeah.
Is it on the plan? I don't see it.
It's on the plan, yes.
It's the existing elevation she's showing you, Caesar.
All right. Very
Yeah,
good.
that's existing elevation and this is just a floor plan.
Okay. Good. Any other questions for us?
No, I will touch base with Han and Ed and get your questions answered.
But yeah, you got to get the coverage correct.
Okay.
Sarah, anything from the public?
No. There's nobody in, no comments in the chat and no one's raising their hand to speak.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay. Could the board stay on for next 2 minutes? Sure.
Just remember, Caesar, you're still live.
Yep.
Ed, you were so off on the time.
Bad fire me. You know what it is? I should be punished and sent home for the rest of the week.
I said the under.
Yeah,
Sarah,
you were moving that last one a little fast, Caesar.
Sarah,
You
anybody?
know,
on
that's
except
why I
us?
read the resolution. so
Caesar,
fast.
we're still live and broadcasting.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
How do you not broadcast?
can't.
We can't, Caesar.
But there's nobody else on.
There is an attendee, but like I said, we're still live.
You're live, Caesar. Anything you want to do, it's public right
I'm
now.
not going to say anything bad, so just going to thank everybody. And I mean, that the Marvera was a difficult road to travel, and I think we did well. And we just wanted to make a special time out for the board to thank everybody for their patience and perseverance. That's about it. And Mary Ann, thank you for all that reading. All the work went in to get it to the point where you could read it. Okay, anything else?
Nothing
No,
other
I
than
think
echoing
you
what
did a great
Caesar
job
just said.
leading
Thank you.
us.
That's that, Lori.
You did a nice job leading us, and I think that there was a lot of due diligence and thoughtful consideration. And I do think that chat really helped, like, make sure we were looking at everything fully. So I think we made space for the public and took a couple sessions, but it was worth it.
Yeah, I agree. Came out okay.
Sure did.
Okay, thank you, everybody. We'll see you.
Happy New Year.
Night, everybody. Happy New Year.
Feel better, everybody.